Welcome back. Let's return to our top story. Donald Trump's sweeping global tariffs have been struck down by the US Supreme Court. The president has condemned the decision and criticised the judges who made it, saying it's in foreign interests. Well, we're joined now by former Chief of Staff for the White House Council of Economic Advisers, Harry Broadman. Good to get your reaction on all of this. I mean, it feels like a pretty pivotal moment in the Trump administration. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I don't want to overstate it, but it could be a pivotal moment in U.S. trade policy. I mean, the really fascinating thing to me is the choice of statute. That sounds like we're getting in the weeds, but it's obviously very important, as you know, at this point. The choice of statute. I don't know who advised him to do that, because it's not the statute that I would have chosen when I was assistant U.S. trade representative. And this has invited, I think, a lot of the problem. I suspect if I were in the room that Trump would say, well, I like the name of emergency on the title of that statute. Let's use that. But as we know, these different statutes have different parameters associated with them. And it turns out it was a really bad call. Put aside whether tariffs are a good idea or not. But the instrument that was used was really not intelligently chosen, in my view.
So he's going to change that instrument, isn't he? And says that he'll raise more money from his new 10% tariff. Do you think that is possible?
It really depends on the tariff rates. Who knows whether he's going to keep this sort of 10% notion or there's going to be different rates. And it's usually, as you may know, investigations are needed. So there's got to be paper written that justifies the various tariffs that he will choose. And those investigations will usually specify what has been the revenue losses to the United States from unfair trade practices and the like, and jobs that were lost and so forth. And then he would key those numbers as to what kind of percentage of tariff he would use and how broad and how specific to put on the various tariffs.
It's been a key plank of his economic policy, of course, and he argues tariffs boost American manufacturing. Is there a lot of proof of that? Critics say it's simply passed on to consumers.
Well, ultimately, a significant part, it depends on the product, in question, but the consumer ultimately pays some of the tariff, because the companies who are selling the goods that were imported, they've got to pay the tariff. And then in turn, they say, well, we shouldn't pay the full freight of this tariff. We're going to pass it on to the firms who buy from us or the end consumer. So that's the issue here.
So what's been the reaction then to the ruling by the Supreme Court amongst American businesses, amongst industry?
Well, I think some of them are relieved, but I would not be relieved for the long run, because as you heard him say in his presentation, Trump, he's going to come back and he's got sort of expectations of doing even more in terms of raising even further revenues. That all remains to be seen. I thought his performance today at the news conference was sort of interesting. I'll be polite about what he said, and it was sort of all over the place. And that's the problem. And the court really thought, well, you sort of have been taking a sawed-off shotgun approach, Mr. Trump. Give us something that has precision and a substantive reason about what are the costs incurred by the U.S. economy, and therefore that suggests a tariff level of X, Y, and Z. That maybe that was in the paperwork, I don't know, but if it has, it certainly has not been made known, at least to me.
Yeah, it was interesting seeing the reaction of Wall Street as well, because it was fairly calm, wasn't it? Unlike, of course, when the tariffs were initially announced.
I think most people who are tuned in here in the business community, you don't have to be a trade negotiator like me or, on the Council of Economic Advisors like me to know that this is going to have an impact. And they probably thought, boy, they were probably advised by people like me, we don't think the court is going to uphold this. So they probably were, I think most of the bets in the United States, frankly, from people I know and speak to, the court was not going to go ahead with approving these.
Do you think there'll now be a huge refund battle? Trump suggesting, it could get dragged through the courts for years.
Well, it could. I mean, that's all. That's always the problem here. And I don't think the Trump team really figured out when you reverse engineer these, putting these tariffs on, and what do you do with the refunds collected? That's going to be another, series of suits, and you got to figure out, okay, so what percentage of the tariff? It's a pie, right? What slice of the pie is going to be absorbed by the firm? What part of the tariff pie is going to be absorbed by consumers or other industries who in turn sell them to other industries in a vertically integrated economy? It's not an art. It's almost a science to try to figure this out. And I can tell you, having done this, it's very complicated.
Of course. And just finally, Donald Trump, very critical, perhaps understandably, from his point of view, of the Supreme Court itself, and saying that it's been swayed by foreign interests. He wouldn't go into any more detail. What do you think he meant by that?
Well, my interpretation is that he's referring to firms abroad, whether they're U.S. firms abroad, and he conflated them with foreign firms, or foreign firms who are suppliers to U.S. firms, that, they obviously have lobbyists in Washington, as every country in the world, and they made their views known to say, if you do this, let me tell you, we're going to jack up the prices because we're not going to pay this tariff. So, and you would expect in an internationalized economy, where there's a court ruling dealing with trade, that all vested interest will want to have a say. And the issue is, how did the court balance competing interests, the importers, the U.S. firms who then resell, the customers, firms who supply the firms who sell. It's a cascading effect. And you can imagine that, and having sat in Washington now for 50 years, these things come to the fore, and there's a lot of conversations. I'm not sure whether he meant that there was bribery going on. That would be, a bridge too far.
Yeah, let's hope not. Thank you, as always. We always appreciate your analysis. Former Chief of Staff for the White House Council of Economic Advisors, Harry Broadman. Good to see you.
Thank you.